adopted a law setting common criteria and procedures for students and researchers to come to the EU in order to facilitate the entry and residence in the EU. Ireland and Denmark have their own rules. And we also have a website called the EU Immigration Portal, where you can find information on the procedure, on the criteria to fulfill for entry and stay in all the member states concerned. And by selecting your migration profile and the member state at stake, you will find very useful information on the different conditions to be fulfilled, on the entities where you have to which you have to contact.
Wonderful. Maybe then, may I perhaps ask you, what is the type of visa that students should be applying for? What is the documents that one should be thinking about in their pre-departure phase of student mobility?
Yes, this is not so easy, unfortunately, because there are different types. It depends on how long you want to stay in the EU. So if you want to stay for up to 90 days, you will need a short stay visa, also called Schengen visa. So if you come for a conference or a short course, you will have to apply for such a Schengen visa. It is the same as if you were coming to the EU for tourism. If you want to come for more than 90 days because you want to follow a course of study during a whole semester, an academic year even, or for a full degree, you need to apply for a long stay visa or a residence permit. So this depends on the member state where you go. Some of them ask for a long stay visa, others for a residence permit. But the competent consulate can in any case inform you. And as I said, you will also find this information on the immigration portal. It's very important that you apply for the right document. If you want to stay longer than 90 days, you should not apply for a short term or Schengen visa, because otherwise, once you are in the EU, it is in most cases not possible to change this visa anymore, which means that you would potentially eventually then have to leave the EU because you don't have the right visa.
I think that's a very good point, because when I talk to students as well as across India, what I find is they typically understand Schengen visa, but they don't realize that there's a distinction between durations. Is it more than 90 days or less than 90 days? Thank you for that advice. Naturally, the decision to issue a visa and the application process is one that has to be followed at each country. So if you're going to Ireland, you follow the Irish exam details and you get that from the Irish embassy. If you're going to France to study, you follow the French embassy's instructions on the French embassy's website. But are there any common threads, any conditions or criteria that almost all of those countries in part of the Schengen zone would be following, so that students can at least know what to expect when they walk in through that door?
Yes, as I said, we have a European law which sets the framework for all the member states, all the 25 member states, which are submitted to this law. It's not Ireland, as I said. Ireland has its own national legislation, but otherwise all the other member states except Denmark and Ireland, they will ask you to submit a travel document, a valid travel document, which is usually a passport. You will have to prove that you have sufficient resources during your stay and that you have sickness insurance. If you're a minor, you will need a parental authorization. These are the general requirements. Then if you want to come as a student, you will obviously also have to provide evidence that you have been accepted by a university in the EU. And you may also be asked to prove your knowledge of the language in which the course will be given. And you will sometimes also have to prove that you have paid university fees. It depends on the national legislation of the member state, because there are some provisions in this European law which are optional. So member states can choose to implement them in their national legislation. So with regard to fees, for example, and the knowledge of the language, knowledge of the course. So this depends then really on the member state.
Absolutely, I completely agree. And what I find also very interesting is you mentioned language. That is something that I often hear from embassy officials when I interview and meet them, that the candidates that come for applying for visas sometimes don't even know that there is this requirement there to be able to at least communicate or have some familiarity with the local language. So it's something that I highly encourage all students to think about before starting to move, that you perhaps inquire about cultural centers that offer linguistic classes, some introductory courses. Sometimes you can even download an app these days on your mobile phone that gives you some familiarity. Or you can, of course, join something like the Alliance Française, which gives you a full range of traditional language classes that can help you prepare yourself. So absolutely. Now, when it comes to the documents to apply for, you've talked about that. Are there any possibilities that once I've arrived in the country, in the European Union, in these 20 Schengen member states, am I allowed to work? This is often a question that students ask me, because it can allow them to supplement the cost of their lifestyle in Europe, which can be expensive, let's be honest, when you compare it to the life in India.
Yes. So once you have got this document, the long stay visa or the permit, you are indeed allowed to work. And there are no restrictions as to the field or area in which you can work. So it's not necessary, it has not to be linked to the course of study or the area, the field of study you have opted for. Member states may, however, set a limit on the number of working hours, which is normal, because your main purpose should be to follow the course of study, not to work. But you are allowed to work at least 15 hours per week, and some member states have a higher limit. Researchers, if you are a researcher, you are allowed to teach in parallel of your research.
So 15 hours minimum. And of course, there are no limitations on the industry that you work in, but of course, but you have to check with the country that you're applying to and who hold the visa for.
Yes,
because there could be some changes and deviations. And
there could be some. There could also be. It is in some countries it is necessary that you need a work permit, but again, you should be provided with. This information or information in this regard on by the consulates and also on this immigration portal.
Excellent. Excellent. And then last, before I move on to my colleague Surbi from the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi, I wanted to know, many students then ask the following question to me is, after I have finished the study program, once I have completed that and I have successfully graduated, as many of us do, what is the next steps? Do I need to pack my bags and run back home? Do I have an opportunity to explore the labor market in the country that I've just finished studying? And for how long?
No, the EU is, of course, very keen on not only on attracting, but also on retaining talent. And so you don't have to pack your bags. You are entitled to get a permit to stay in the member state concerned for 9 months after graduation, in order to look for a job or to set up a business. This is always the case if you finish a master, and some countries also allow bachelor graduates to stay. And some member states allow you to stay for longer than those 9 months. So 9 months are the minimum. During these 9 months, you are, however, usually not allowed to work. And if you find a job, you will need to apply for a permit then, which will allow you to work. This depends. In some cases, it's on the basis of national law. In some cases, on the basis of EU law. It depends on the work you have found and the job you would like to do.
So if I may summarize, then checking with your embassy is extremely important right away as soon as you have received your admissions letter. Familiarizing yourself with the language of the country you're going to study in, even if your program may be in English, is a very useful thing to know and to have. And then while studying, you can work up to 15 hours per week, but that can differ depending on the country by country. And up to 9 months after you've graduated, you can stay and look for a job or start a business. Very useful information. Thank you so much, Doris. Surbi, may I jump to you now from the perspective of the Ministry of External Affairs? Many of the Indian students that are creating brighter futures for us in Europe as well as across the world sometimes need help from the ministry. Sometimes find themselves in situations where they did not realize they were going to be vulnerable. What are the steps that the ministry is taking to support students? What can they do in these type of instances? Over to you.
Thank you, Nauzad, for that question. To introduce myself briefly before I answer that question. My name is Surabhi. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer of India Center for Migration. We are a think tank with the Ministry of External Affairs, and we work on a range of issues concerning migration and mobility from India. Now, to address the question, Nauzad, the MEA has been very active when it comes to student issues. First and foremost, for those students who are desirous of going abroad for study across the world, and more so in the case of Europe, it is advisable that those who are intending to study abroad register themselves on the Madad portal, which is an initiative of the Government of India. It's a consular services management system where students can log in, enter their information, which is available across the board with the embassy and the ministry. And it is a sort of mechanism which is aimed to help the students in case they are in distress or if any sort of help is required. Further, it is also advisable that if they have not registered with the Madad portal, then they should register with the embassy of the destination country to which they are going. Often the embassy also puts out advisories for the student which contain essential information such as how to check the credentials of the university in the country to which they're planning to go, what are the visa requirements, fees, how to check the credentials of agents and the advertisements being put out in the newspapers. So essential information like that, especially in major destination countries. Usually the embassy does put out that information, and the registration which can happen through the embassy is linked backwards with the Madad portal. So that database is then there of students who are going abroad. Further, there is also this Global Indian Student Portal, which is in the works. It's a unique portal and a flagship initiative of the government to engage with students who are planning to go and study abroad. And this portal will provide first-hand verified information to Indian students who are planning to study abroad and pursue professional courses. And it will have verified information. So this is expected to be launched sometime next year. So these some of the initiatives which the MEA has taken per se. Other than that, there are fellowships by Government of India fellowships, not necessarily MEA fellowships, which are there to support students who are planning to study abroad.
Thank you, Surabhi. In fact, that's really helpful to keep in mind that the Madad portal is there. It's meant to help you in case of need, but it's also there for dissemination of information, the information that is useful even when you're not in an emergency. The Madad portal was very helpful and instrumental to embassy officials in Europe when we had the COVID crisis back in March 2020, and the embassies needed to get in touch with students because they were locked in. They were not able to now work because the whole economies had shut down. What do these students do? So this is a really vital piece of information that I would really encourage all students to keep in mind when they think about traveling abroad, is that there is this portal. And I also take great note of the fact that there's this global portal that is now coming. I'm looking forward to that in 2022. I'm sure the students are looking forward to that as well. If I may, I was also interested to know if you could zoom out a bit more. What role does the ICM play in developing other tools, or what kind of other work or support does ICM do to Indian students that they may be interested in? I have been a part of the cooperation over the last 4 years. I can talk a lot about all the wonderful things that you and I have been able to do together, but perhaps the students are interested in a few things that you may know of.
Yes, Nauzad, thank you. Apart from the checklist that was developed under the CAMP project in which you and I had worked together, there is this handbook which has been developed by ICM. It sort of provides a more detailed information on how to prepare prior to the travel, how to make the decision, how to go about visa, paperwork, what to pack, what not to pack. Those kind of essential step-by-step information which are really handy when we are thinking of planning to go for higher studies. That kind of a tool, not exactly a tool, but a handbook which is more detailed has been developed by ICM. I'll put out the link in the chat box if that can be viewed by the students. And from time to time, we also have discussions through webinars and consultations in which we try to engage with students on various issues pertaining to student mobility. And due to COVID, our work was impacted, but we plan to also engage with colleges and go and sort of meet the education counselors there and sort of distribute and widely disseminate the support tools that we have developed for the students through flyers and posters. That is something we could not do in person due to COVID, but that's we will be doing in the forthcoming months.
Absolutely. We've all been affected by that. And at the end of the day, what I think is important is to also remind the audience about the work that ICM is doing on things such as skills recognition and exploring new channels for them once they've graduated from either Indian or European universities. Thank you, Surabhi, for that. And I'm once again would like to congratulate ICM for all the good cooperation that we have enjoyed over the years. Now over to you, Rui. As the member state, the European member state that is often the first port of call for these students that are eager to come and study, either in Portugal or elsewhere. Perhaps you can share a little bit more information on Portugal's experience with India. What has been happening lately for researchers and students that maybe has caught the eye of many of the students in the news as well as other places? So over to you, Rui.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Portugal and India have a long-standing cooperation in the fields of education and innovation, but I'd just like to point out a recent agreement that is being signed between Portugal and India last September on the recruitment of Indian citizens. In fact, the main goal of this agreement is to increase migration management effectiveness and the role of legal employment in these processes, especially in the cases of skilled workers, academics, research and information technology students. This agreement is not focusing mainly on students, but today students can become researchers and researchers can benefit from this agreement. The aim of this agreement is to establish the procedures for admission of Indian citizens to carry out a professional activity and an employment contract in Portugal. What is important in this bilateral agreement is the recognition for the need to fight irregular migration and human trafficking. That sometimes it happens when people apply for student visas or employment visas. Channels of migration should be regulated, in particular of salaried employees. This agreement will allow both countries also to reinforce bilateral cooperation in matters of labor migration flows. To pursue these goals, a joint committee composed by entities of both sides, including the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of India and my own Ministry of Foreign Affairs, will exchange information on our foreseeable job opportunities in Portugal and share relevant data on sector-specific and skill-specific requirements on these job opportunities on a regular basis. On the other hand, the Indian employees admitted under this agreement shall benefit from the same work, payment, rights and conditions, especially on the health and safety, applicable to the Portuguese employees.
Thank you. So what you're describing then is in very sort of boiled down terms, an opportunity for Indian workers to be able to explore the Portuguese market and under what conditions and terms they would be able to do that once they have, of course, graduated and acquired the skills that are necessary for employment. That's a very unique and, of course, many other member states are undergoing such agreements. So thank you for sharing that. What I would like to perhaps now talk is a little bit more closely to the heart of Indian students that are applying for visas for student life. Maybe you can tell me what are the top 5 pieces of advice you can give to students that are coming to apply for a visa at the Portuguese embassy?
Well, first of all, I think Doris has already mentioned There are different kinds of visas, taking in consideration where we're talking about study visa. It's someone referring to graduations, research, training, internships, and all have to be regarding the duration of the stay. As Doris mentioned before, it can be till 90 days, or then this will be a Schengen visa, or then it can fall international visas. So in the Portuguese case, it will be less than 1 year or more than 1 year. So it can be Schengen visas or national visas. An important point is that students should clarify all the doubts only with official entities involved in the process, such as universities, not only the Indian universities, but also the European universities, the visa sections from the consulates and the embassies, and also very important, so in the Portuguese case and other European countries, we have a kind of outsourcing entities that deal with the visas. In the Portuguese case is the VFS, sending emails and checking information on our websites. In turn, they should avoid using the help of third parties, so unscrupulous people and agents which frequently provide incorrect information and prepare the process with the wrong documents. And once they apply for the visa with these wrong documents, it will be a long process to overcome. And a student visa is a specific kind of visa, and it should not be used by a person aiming to go to visa or to working in Europe. So if they apply in the first stage for a student visa, they should go for a student visa. And what we are finding out is that there are many people that they very much willing to go to Europe, and they try to find out, or someone tell them, no, it's easy if you try to apply for a student visa, and sometimes it's not correct, and the process will be very complicated. And from my point of view, I think studying abroad should not be a business. We should not feed these unscrupulous people and agents, but should be a rewarding step for someone's future career and with strong ambitions. In the case of Portugal, so we have in India the consular section of the Portuguese embassy in New Delhi. You have the Portuguese consulate in Goa, and apart from them, you can apply for many informations in these VFS centers. In the case of Portugal, you can apply, apart from New Delhi and Mumbai, Chennai, Calcutta, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, and Hyderabad.
Thank you very much, Rui. So I think from what I've heard from your intervention, especially when it comes to the advice that students should take away from you for applying for visas, is first and foremost, make sure that you understand what the duration of your visit is. That will determine whether you apply for what is famously known as a Schengen visa, or if it's greater than 90 days, a national visa. That's a very important tip. Secondly, to keep in mind that recruitment or educational agencies that offer you services are not necessary, and most importantly, often guide you in the wrong direction. In your experience, this is what I hear. It is advisable to use the website of the embassy. It is advisable to get in touch with the visa services, the VFS, which is a contractor which you work with. They have accurate information. They know what they can do and what cannot be done. And also, to get in touch with the network of consular services that are available across the country, in Ahmedabad, in Goa, as you've mentioned, in Bangalore, that would also be able to offer you direct information as a student. The other thing that I wanted to highlight from your intervention, Rui, is the need to not abuse or misuse the visa for students. if you're going to be going for work or for other motivations, make sure that you apply for the right visa, because this can be very easily spotted by the embassy officials who are working in the Consular Affairs Division. Is that a fair summary of all the different points that you've raised, Rui?
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You are muted. You are muted.
Oh, I hope you heard the summary of the Portuguese intervention. I think that part was heard, I hope. The proposal I have before us is to now go to the question and answer session. And for that, I would like to start by raising two questions that have been already proposed in the chat. The first is, can we have more information about the Madad portal? Surbi, this is something that I think would be relevant for you. So I was wondering if perhaps you would like to say a few words about the Madad portal. And to help you talk about it, I've already prepared the Madad portal in the back of my screen so that maybe you can talk a little bit about it in concrete terms and so people can see it. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you, Nauzad. We have already shared the link to the portal in the chat, so I hope it's already visible to the students. So
we've put it into
yes.
the info desk. We've put it into the info desk, everyone.
Yes. So what do you need to do is to visit the Madad portal, click on the link for registration of Indian students abroad, fill in your required details, then you'll get an activation link in your mail and an SMS on your mobile number. And to activate the account, so you need to activate the account as well as, and then you'll be logged into the Madad portal where you'll be asked to fill in details like your name, surname, date of birth, and all of that information. Your personal details and emergency contacts can be filled and saved as well. So, and the course for which you're going, those details will be asked for. And then once you submit, the information goes into the Madad data management system. And you will get, after this process is complete, then you'll get a student registration confirmation once you successfully log in and registered on this portal. And then this database is visible to the embassy where you're going. It's available here in India in case you need some help in case of distress. It's advisable that all of you do register through this portal. Are there any other questions now, Zada, as well?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. There was a separate question about the fellowships that you proposed on study abroad. If you know of anything on that, I don't know if you have something on that.
So there are various fellowships which are offered, not, as I mentioned back then, are also not necessarily offered by the MEA, but under various MOUs or exchange programs, there are fellowships available. Under the cultural and educational exchange program. So perhaps the idea would be to then go and check through MHRD or any other, through the embassy websites on the fellowships available.
Thank you, Surbi. The next question from the chat, as I understand it, is to Doris. Doris, there's a question about, is there a standard or minimum threshold for how much, or maximum threshold for how much a student visa should cost?
No, there is no such threshold. And I also have to tell you that this is not even in the EU's competence to regulate this, because this is really the competence of the member state concerned to charge these fees with regard to long stay visas and residence permits.
Okay, Rui, how much does it cost for a student visa? If an Indian student is listening and wondering if they are paying too much to their agent, are you aware of it? Any guidance on this, Rui?
So I cannot give you the right answer because the difference differs according to the type of visa.
Of course.
But they are all the same pattern. So they're all according to the duration and according to the type of visa they are requiring.
Okay, thank you.
What I wanted to say, just sorry for interrupting.
Please.
Normally, this information you can find this kind of information on public websites. So before paying whatever to an agent, I would really advise you to just Google this, and normally you will find this information. So it should be easily accessible.
One piece of advice is that there's a lot of information on Google that is sometimes incorrect or misguides you. So the checklist and the podcast also offer you links to the Study in Europe portal that is developed by the European Union. That would also give you some very useful information about cost and what type of visas you should be applying for. We've put the link in, again, the info desk for you to download this checklist and to listen into the podcast. So you should have that information for whoever asked the question about how much the visa cost is. There's another question in the chat that I think is relevant to many of you, not to you as a panelist, but to students, is that the level of courses that are available in English, in spite of the fact that perhaps the member state language is not English. Rui, as the only member state representative, do you know of, are there any courses? I'm sure there are, and perhaps you can just confirm this. There are courses that are taught in English, correct?
Many courses. Portugal investing a lot teaching in English, mostly in this scientific or natural, so the maths, the biology, the astronomy, the engineering, architecture, all of them in the public and private